Coming up on Bizarre Murders. A young woman with great potential, connected to three men with hidden agendas, and a whodunit high-tech investigation reveals how a half-baked fresh start can lead to getting burnt. Cecilia is a 21-year-old high school dropout. She's had some bad luck in the past, but she's planning a new beginning and has all the right stuff to succeed.
Right?
Yeah.
Judd has been Cecilia's close friend since high school. He knows what she's been through, and through it all, he's been there for her. This new apartment is the fresh start Cecilia needs.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Mateo. Nice to meet you. I'm your new neighbor.
Cecilia.
Cecilia, nice to meet you.
That's Judd.
Nice to meet you, Judd. You guys need a hand?
Yes, do you mind?
Cool, yeah, no worries.
Mateo's warm welcome is icing on the cake.
This one. Judd?
Judd, for real?
But then Dylan, Cecilia's ex-boyfriend, makes a surprise appearance.
Get out of here. You get out of here. What the hell's your problem?
He's the reason she needs a fresh start.
You punk! That's what you get. Yo!
What are you doing here?
It's a long time.
What are you doing here?
What am I?
Cecilia was 16 when she met Dylan, your typical bad boy.
You're supposed to be with me. What the hell are you doing?
Cecilia, is this guy bothering you?
No, he's not.
You're bothering me, bro.
Soon, she was hanging out with the wrong crowd, skipping classes, and eventually she dropped out of school.
This is the punk you with now? Is that what's up?
They moved in together, but it was more of a nightmare than a fairy tale.
You need to get out of here.
Who is that anyways?
None of your business.
It's been 5 years since Cecilia made that mistake, and try as she may, it seems to be following her.
At the FBI, we take it very seriously that 1 in 4 women in the United States have been the victim of severe physical violence. Even worse, 1 in 3 women who is a victim of homicide was murdered by her current or former partner.
Dylan, you gotta go.
Let's just have a talk about it.
I'm gonna call the cops, okay?
Call the cops for, girl?
I'm going to call the police. So go! Go! Oh, I'm sorry.
You all right, man?
You okay?
Who was that guy?
Nobody. Honestly.
This is what we call a cycle of abuse. More often than not, women in her situation won't call the police. And usually, that ends badly.
All right, you guys can put that wherever you want.
Despite the fiasco on her first day in her new apartment, Cecilia is still determined to put it all behind her.
Wait, I just want to say thank you.
Hey, no problem.
Thanks
Nice to meet
again.
you. Yeah.
You're wonderful.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
And she has willing help close by from her very friendly new neighbor, Mateo. Which doesn't thrill Judd. In the days that follow, Cecilia settles into her new digs.
Hello? I'm good. How are you?
A fresh start, new neighbors. Things are looking up for Cecilia. Independence suits her well.
I need an ambulance. My friend's been attacked. Hurry!
The worst case scenario is finding a friend or family member has been murdered. I don't wish it on anybody. But if it happens, the most important thing to do is to call 911 and please don't disturb the crime scene.
There's only one way in and one way out of this bathroom, and it's a bottleneck for evidence. Using specialized tools, investigators scour the crime scene, uncovering evidence that is present but invisible to the naked eye.
The best thing you can find at a crime scene is the proverbial smoking gun, but a piece of evidence left behind by the killer that ties them directly to the crime. It's fingerprints, DNA, blood. Those are all crucial.
Jackpot. Detectives note that these prints are barefoot and that the smears appear to be from a cleaning attempt.
Fingerprints have all sorts of unique loops, swirls, and ridges, and they can be used to identify crooks. You know, your feet have the exact same thing. Either way, cops love prints. Detectives find extensive blood spray on both the walls around the tub and on the floor. This tells me she was alive at the time her throat was cut, because the spray is caused by the high pressure of her blood, which isn't there if you're not alive. The body was found partially clothed and placed in the tub. This tells me that there was probably an assault, and likely the killer wanted to humiliate the victim. Every bit of evidence tells a story, and these are adding up. Blood in the hallway, on the counter, in the bathroom, a sloppy murder scene, which means it wasn't planned, and of course, the random hot dog buns. This is all trending towards a crime of passion. What it tells me is that we're looking for a killer that knew Cecilia. Right away, with that information, the playing field of suspects is really gonna narrow.
2 weeks after breaking away from her abusive boyfriend and moving into her own apartment, Cecilia is found murdered in her bathtub. Police know that Cecilia struggled with her attacker. She likely yelled. So they turned to people who live close by.
Were you aware that your neighbor Cecilia was murdered on the 15th?
Oh my God, no.
Oh my God.
You do know Cecilia?
I met her one time when she moved in, the day she moved in.
But when asked if the couple had heard anything like screaming or signs of a struggle,
We were all sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a dead end.
Anybody else that might know her?
Actually, there was
Her
boyfriend.
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, her ex-boyfriend Dylan. I think that's what his name. There was the day she moved in. He actually showed up and started arguing with her, and actually punched one of her friends in the stomach.
After hearing about Dylan's altercation with Judd, the detective leaves with both Judd and Dylan on his list of suspects.
What you wanted? Had what you wanted, bro?
Forensic evidence of blood sets the date of the murder as November 13th, sometime between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. And Cecilia's good friend Judd, who called 911, is one of the suspects.
Friend's been attacked. Hurry!
Mateo is also a person of interest because he had access to the victim. But with his history of violence against Cecilia, Dylan is the prime suspect.
How well did you know Cecilia?
That was my girl, man. We were together for like 4 or 5 years.
Dylan fits the profile and is certainly guilty of a lot.
Where were you on the night of the 15th, between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m.?
I was out with friends. These 2 girls I know from college. Man, you need to stop wasting my time and find the dude who did this.
While police attempt to corroborate Dylan's story, they bring Mateo in for further questioning.
What happened during that altercation on the day she moved in?
This guy's like really violent, aggressive. He's yelling, he's screaming, and he ends up punching Judd in the stomach and runs off.
If you don't mind, we'd like to take your fingerprints.
My fingerprints? Why? I barely knew her. I was in the house once.
With no clear killer emerging, the police also want to hear more details from Judd.
Tell me about the day that you went by Cecilia's house and made the phone call.
I got really worried that she wasn't answering my call. Cease, it's Judd. It's like the 20th message I've left you. Where are you? Give me a call back. Cease?
Why would you break in?
I looked in the window and I saw a mess. Cease? I felt in my stomach that she was in trouble and I had no choice. I had to break in. You hear? Cecilia! And once I was inside, I walked to the washroom. There she was.
Was she alive when you found her?
No.
You'd find it shocking how often guilty people are trying to defer suspicion by appearing to help police. Yeah, okay, whatever. We got your number. We've seen this before.
Do you know of anybody that would want to harm her?
Dylan. Her ex-boyfriend, Dylan. For sure, he's crazy, that guy. For sure.
There are 3 suspects and a dump truck full of evidence. But between the random buns and the guys in her life, how do investigators make heads or tails of any of this? These 3 guys all had contact with the victim within 4 days of her death. 2 of them had personal relationships with her, while the 3rd lived right beside her. This is a whodunit, and in cases like this, we use the process of elimination. We're not adding suspects, we're eliminating them. Just line up the ducks and eliminate them using facts until there's only one left.
Investigators discovered Dylan's alibi is airtight. He was out drinking with 2 college co-eds. He's off the hook. So now they turn to Judd. Investigators have a problem with Judd's story. How does a 165-pound man slip through a tiny window and not disturb anything on the kitchen counter? So they take him back to the scene of the crime in order to corroborate his claims. Judd demonstrates what he did the morning he found the body, and the counter remains untouched. For now, he's no longer a suspect. To complicate matters, police don't find a match to either Dylan or Judd's prints anywhere in the house. Detectives are at a loss with their 2 prime suspects eliminated and time ticking.
If you don't nail down a case in the first 48 hours, the chances of it ever being solved get pretty slim.
But then they catch a break. Forensics find a match to the bloody footprint found at the scene of the crime. It belongs to Mateo.
Now they've placed Mateo at the crime scene. They've caught him in a lie.
I was in the house once.
He has graduated to prime suspect. It's not a lock, but it is definitely time to have a 3rd conversation with the friendly neighbor next door.
Mateo is brought in for another round of questioning.
We found your footprint in the hallway.
Police confront him with the matching footprint evidence. Obviously shaken, he gives detectives a complete flip-flop of his original story.
Okay, look, man. I was with Cecilia the night before she died.
Mateo claims that he and Cecilia have been having a bombshell affair for the past couple of weeks that started right after she moved in.
That night, we had a couple drinks, we made out a little bit, and then I left. I swear I didn't kill her. The next morning, I snuck over to her place to surprise her.
Cecilia. Hey, Cecilia.
He had visited for another morning tryst when he found her dead in the tub.
I panicked. There was blood everywhere. So I ran home, scared. Well, I realized I left bloody footprints in the hallway. So I ran back and cleaned them up. I was just scared, but I didn't kill her.
He claims that's how his prints got in the hallway.
So why didn't you report the body?
It's my wife, man. I didn't want my wife to find out about the affair.
One more shoe drops in Mateo's perimeter.
What can you tell me about this?
This is a long time ago, man. I'm a different person.
They found that he has a domestic abuse conviction against him, but it was in another state, which is how it was missed on the routine check.
And this is part of the reason why I didn't call, because I knew I would be a suspect.
Game changer. This is a big deal, because if you've got one conviction for violence against a spouse, you've probably done it a lot before it got bad enough to have your wife turn you in. This guy has a proven violent temper, and he's not afraid to take that out on women.
I swear I didn't kill her.
Police think they're looking at their guy, but they don't have enough conclusive evidence to lay a charge that will stick. They're forced to let him go, but under the order that he's not to leave town.
Instinct is telling me this is the guy. Here's the hitch, and it's a big one. Just because they have his footprint doesn't mean they have him for committing murder. He hardly knew her. Why would he kill her? This guy could skate on reasonable doubt. This one footprint only places him at the scene of the crime. They need to place him in that bathroom at the time of the crime.
The detective combs over the evidence again, but this time with nothing but Mateo as their prime suspect. While reassessing crime scene photos, he notices something odd about one of the hot dog buns. It looks like half of the bun has been squashed down, unlike the other buns. The bun is rock-hard stale, and when detectives dust the squashed half of bun number 3, a very clear partial footprint reveals itself.
This is where the investigation goes from pretty weird to totally bizarre. The bun is now rock hard. You know how they get after a few days. In order to have made a clear footprint, the perpetrator would have had to have stepped on the bun when it was perfectly fresh and soft. That means the owner of the footprint on the bun was in the bathroom when the buns got dumped out from their bag during the crime. That person stepped on bun number 3, leaving behind their footprint. Signed, sealed, delivered. Scene of the crime, time of the crime. All that has to be done now is find whomever belongs to that footprint, and they are baked.
The detective uses 3D scan overlay technology on Mateo's footprint and the bun print to establish if they are in fact identical.
These guys have a slam dunk with this evidence. Really, this is all over except for the whining.
Mateo, we have your footprint that places you in the bathroom at the time of her death. We have a search warrant to search the rest of your house.
All I did was knock on her door. Baby, I'm sorry.
How could you?
Police put together the evidence and determined that on the evening of November 13th, Mateo went to Cecilia's house after his wife, Carolyn, had gone to bed.
Hey, girl.
We need to talk.
Talk about what?
This needs to stop.
He made a pass at her, but Cecilia wanted nothing to do with him.
You have a wife, you have kids, you need to leave me alone.
Here's a guy who just couldn't handle being rejected. Big man. And in his mind, she disrespected him. This enraged Mateo so much that he attacked her. To most of us, that's senseless, but in his mind, it makes perfect sense. He's the man, he's in charge, right? No, wrong.
Oh, no.
Mateo dragged Cecilia to the bathroom, where he slit her throat with scissors. Then, he placed her in the bathtub and ran the water, washing away any DNA evidence.
And the hot dog buns. This is a weird one, but follow me on it. Killer needed to get rid of the bloody scissors. So he leaves them in the bathroom, he goes to the kitchen and grabs the first plastic bag he saw so he doesn't leave a trail of blood. This bag held hot dog buns. He brought him back to the bathroom, bagged his evidence so he could get it out of the house. And that's how the blood got on the counter, and that's how the buns got onto the floor.
Mateo, you were under arrest for the murder of Cecilia, your neighbor.
All I did was knock on her door.
Mateo is charged with first-degree murder of Cecilia and sentenced to life without parole.
This kind of murder always makes me wonder who is a killer and who isn't. I mean, on the surface, with a 9-year relationship and 2 kids, you'd assume this guy would have developed better impulse control. But no, never assume anything. we're fortunate that this time, that this guy left behind the smoking bun.
Nope.
On this episode of Bizarre Murders,
Hi.
when a lonely heart thinks she's found the man of her dreams, she launches into a whirlwind romance.
I don't like him and I don't trust him.
But will he make her heart skip
Oh my god, yes, yes.
or just stop beating?
Send an ambulance right away. My wife's unconscious.
Joan, the manager of a prestigious local architecture firm, has everything she ever wanted when it comes to her career.
Nope. No.
But after 2 failed marriages, this 45-year-old finds herself back in the dating pool, and the water is cold.
Too into himself.
When you're a woman over 40, unfortunately, most of your dating options are less Fabio and more Flabio. This leaves many successful women with their beds empty and their bank accounts full. Targets for attractive young liars, scammers, or worse. It just isn't fair.
Just when Joan's given up on finding love again, the man of her dreams walks in to her office.
Hi.
Hi,
I'm Clay.
Joan. Come in.
Clay, a chiseled-jawed architect who's just turned 32, is starting his first day at Joan's firm.
So, how are you settling in?
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Good.
Everyone's been really welcoming and, you know, figuring my way around.
Good.
Yeah.
From the moment their eyes meet, there are sparks.
Stop by anytime. My door is always open to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
To Joan, Clay seems like the man she's been searching for her entire life. Not only is he handsome, but he's charming, funny, and has a great job.
You might want to tell your wife that you're going to be working long hours.
I'm single.
Oh. Okay, so great.
But with 13 years age difference between them, Joan's certain Clay would never be attracted to her.
But Joan's wrong. Clay's interested in her, very interested. The question is it for the right reasons?
When Clay makes his desires known, Joan is more than receptive. Before long, the couple is inseparable.
This is the first time in her life that Joan feels really loved in every possible way. In a few short months, she's gone from giving up on relationships to living the life of a romance novel heroine, and she's eating it up.
So he's from the Midwest, and where was he before he was at your firm?
I'm not sure. We just haven't made that far in the conversations. But I can tell he's really, really, really good guy.
And how can you tell?
Not everyone is happy about the relationship, though, including Joan's best friend, Lena.
This is moving way too fast. Why don't you just slow down, make sure that it's really right this time?
It's fine.
You've heard people talk about beer goggles, but I've seen plenty of love goggles. Smart people, but they're so wrapped up in their romantic fantasies that they ignore the basic lessons we were taught as kids, like don't trust people until you've gotten to know them. How does that Elvis song go? Only fools rush in.
That was just a truly wonderful night.
Let me get a look at you again. You really are the most beautiful woman I've ever laid my eyes on.
I bet you say that to all the...
Despite Lena's reservations, Joan is determined to live her real-life romance novel. And in 3 months, she moves on to the next chapter.
Will you marry me?
Of course, yes, yes.
2 months later, the couple is married in a small ceremony attended by their closest friends. But a dark cloud appears over Joan's sunny new life when she notices money disappearing from her bank account. There's only 2 people who have access to that account, her and her brand new husband, Clay.
What is this? These are my accounts.
Joan, I can explain this.
Yeah, you better.
Clay confesses to taking the money.
I'm paying child support.
What?
But says he only did it to support his 2 children from his 2 previous marriages.
I've made some bad decisions in my past, but that's what it is. It's the past. Joan, I love you. You're the one I want to be with.
Joan forgives Clay, and he swears to never betray her trust again.
I've lost count of how many times at the FBI we'd see kind, generous, beautiful women desperate for attention being swept away by boy toys who take them for everything they've got. I mean, if it's too good to be true, it is. In my experience, no matter how much these guys swear you can trust them, the situation almost always ends in tears. If you're lucky.
You are his wife now. Don't you think your entire relationship being based on a lie is a little bit of a problem? I don't like him, and I don't trust him, and I don't know what you don't get about that.
Not everyone is as forgiving as Joan.
You can't trust the guy. He lied to you.
When Lena hears what Clay's been up to, she seizes on it as proof he's a bad guy.
You don't know him like I know him.
Life soon returns to normal. Until... Almost a year to the day of her wedding, Joan is struck with a sudden mysterious illness that leaves her throwing up with bloody diarrhea and gasping for breath. By the time Clay races her to the hospital, her organs are already failing.
How are you, Joan? You feeling okay?
Clay stays by his wife's side as puzzled doctors run a battery of tests trying to determine what's happened to the normally vibrant Joan.
Do you think you could just give us a few minutes?
Joan's close confidant, Lena, requests a moment alone with her friend.
I just need to see my friend alone for a few minutes. I'm sure you can understand that.
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
Clay is hesitant,
It'll be fine.
but finally agrees, telling Joan he'll be right outside.
Why is Clay acting so strange? What is going on with him?
Within minutes, Clay gets antsy and decides it's time to resume his place at his wife's side.
One of the signs that Mr. Wonderful might be a problem is that he needs total control over you.
I think Joan needs some rest now, so you should go.
Guys like Clay rely on having absolute influence over the woman they're latched onto. If you're an outsider who isn't buying into his charm and worshiping at the altar of his ego, then you're gone.
With Lena ousted, Clay resumes his vigil at his wife's bedside.
Joan?
Until minutes later, her vital signs crash.
Help! Help! Somebody! Help my wife! Joan may have wanted to live a romance novel, but now her story's taking an unexpected twist. Is she breathing? What's going on? Help!
Doctors inform Clay that Joan has suffered a stroke.
Joan! Joan, come on. Help her! Please, Joan!
Her organs are already failing.
Tell me what's going on!
They warn him to prepare for the worst. But by a medical miracle, they eventually manage to stabilize his wife. When hospital staff double-check Joan's IV, they find the bank of fluids that was previously clear is now cloudy. That can only mean one thing. Someone's tampered with it.
To tamper with an IV bag at a hospital, that's ballsy. You have to undo the line, use a syringe to tamper with the contents, then put everything back in place, all in a couple minutes. That's almost impossible for somebody without medical experience.
Doctors run another battery of tests on Joan. When the results come back, they show something much more serious than IV tampering. She's been poisoned with lidocaine, an everyday medication that in high doses can become deadly.
Lidocaine is best known as a key ingredient in hemorrhoid cream, so it can get rid of a pain in the ass. I wonder who sees Joan as a pain in the ass.
Having discovered that Joan's been poisoned on their watch, doctors must treat this situation as an attempted murder.
Meet you. I'm Detective Weber.
Most of the time when there's an attempt on a woman's life, you'll find that her spouse is behind it. So in a situation like this, we're looking straight at, you guessed it, Mr. Wonderful, Clay. And unlike Joan, we're not focused on his pecs.
But Clay's not the only one who has access to Joan.
You've got doctors, nurses, orderlies, candy stripers. Even Lena has to be considered a suspect as she was alone with Joan. You've heard everybody's a suspect, but it's true. Police work is based on thorough investigations, not on hunches and assumptions. We leave those to psychics and armchair detectives. And let me tell you, our solve rate is much, much higher than theirs.
I'm wondering if either of you have seen anybody other than hospital staff in this room.
No.
No one.
With no hard evidence to narrow the pool of suspects, and with Joan saying she wants to forget the whole incident, Detective Hannah Weber is forced to drop her investigation before it's even begun.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
When Joan is eventually released from the hospital, Clay attends to her every need. And once Joan's back at work,
Hey, babe.
Clay, ever the doting husband, only becomes more protective.
Oh yeah, Clay's right in there protecting Joan from her friends, her coworkers, the police, anyone who could challenge her rose-colored view of him. Thank God for Clay.
Just when Joan is finally getting back to her old routine, she lands in another hospital with the same old symptoms: vomiting, bloody diarrhea, and difficulty breathing. Once again, Clay runs to her side. Once again, her IV turns cloudy. And once again, doctors discover that she has been poisoned with lidocaine.
Well, that narrows the suspect pool because one hospital could have a homicidal staff member going around poisoning patients. I mean, it happens, but it's rare. Two hospitals with would-be killers trying to murder the same patient with the same poison? That only happens in movies, the really bad ones.
When hospital staff get in touch with Detective Weber, she knows what she has to do.
I'm going to need you to step out of the room.
Detective Weber bans everyone but essential staff from the room.
You too, ma'am.
And posts officers to stand guard over Joan. Detective Weber interviews Joan alone so she can speak freely.
How are you feeling?
But Joan refuses to cooperate with the investigation.
Do you know if your husband has been in this room the entire time?
My husband has nothing to do with this.
So Joan is clearly still drinking Clay's Kool-Aid. The investigators would be better off talking to Lena. She's not buying what Clay is selling.
With the investigation once again stalled, Lena decides it's time to take matters into her own hands. Late one night, she sneaks into Clay's office. Lena discovers a series of life insurance policies, all taken out on Joan, with her husband Clay as the sole beneficiary.
Come on, is anybody really surprised by this? I didn't think so.
Certain she's found the proof she needs to expose Clay, Lena again confronts Joan, life insurance policies in hand. Joan is hesitant, but agrees to speak with Clay about the policies that night.
Clay? Can you come here a minute?
What is it?
What are these?
They're insurance policies.
When Joan questions her husband about the policies, he claims he has to protect himself and his children in case anything ever happens to her.
Protect them from what? His cash cow drying up? This guy is a real piece of work.
Honey, you haven't been well. What if something happened? I mean, this is what couples do. You've been talking to Lena, haven't you?
The real problem, Clay says, is Lena snooping through his office.
She's got it in for me.
She doesn't have it in for you.
Yes, she does.
No, she doesn't.
I've sensed it from day one. She's coming between us.
You know, the only thing creepier than trying to control who your wife spends time with,
I don't think you should see her anymore,
is doing that same thing while your hands are around her neck.
We talked about it, and he explained everything to me.
The next day, when Lena asks how Clay reacted to the life insurance policies, Joan turns the situation around.
You know what? I've had enough.
Yeah, me too.
I've had enough of you. Get out. I'm over this. Get out.
By this point, it's obvious to everyone, except Joan, that Clay has it out for her. But she's determined to follow her heart, even if it kills her.
Joan? 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 Joan, are you all right? Joan? Joan? Send an ambulance right away. My wife's unconscious. Joan. Joan. Joan, stay with me.
Joan arrives at the hospital not breathing and with no pulse. Despite their best efforts, doctors are unable to pull off yet another miracle. Within minutes of her arrival, Joan is pronounced dead.
When Joan's fantasy romance takes a deadly turn, Detective Weber's determined to smoke out the killer.
Hi, yeah, it's Detective Weber.
She immediately orders an autopsy. When the results come in, they reveal Joan's cause of death as nicotine poisoning.
Okay, something's not right here. Something's bizarre. You've got a non-smoker who's turned up dead from nicotine poison. In all my years with the FBI, I've never seen anything like it.
The investigation gets more bizarre when the coroner finds an unexplained mark behind her ear.
So, Clay.
Detective Weber interviews prime suspect Clay.
She'd mentioned earlier that day that she had some chest pains, but
he denies having anything to do with Joan's death.
I called 911 and, well, you know the rest.
He claims the couple had simply enjoyed a quiet evening at home, then headed to bed together.
Did Joan have any enemies who may have wanted to kill her?
He suggests that Weber speak with Lena, the only person Joan fought with recently.
I heard you had a fight with Joan about Clay.
We had several fights.
Detective Weber interviews Joan's friend.
He was awful to her. He bled her dry financially.
Only to have her point the finger back at Clay as the one with the real motive to kill Joan. Unable to establish when Joan was poisoned, there's nothing more Detective Weber can do. And once again, the case goes cold.
Lena's devastated by Joan's death. Maybe not surprised, but she's devastated. Clay? Not so much. In a matter of weeks, he sells her house and skips town.
Clay moves to Los Angeles, California, where he gets a job as a graphic designer, remarries, and has a child. But one person refuses to move on. Detective Weber.
Here's my investigative rule. You can have a hunch, but you have to let it die a natural death if evidence changes it. In this case, the only person who had real access to Joan the night of the murder was her husband, Clay. There's been an incredible advance in technology in the last decade or so, and maybe there was enough to get the evidence to make this theory stick.
Detective Weber sends out the evidence to one of the nation's leading nicotine experts. A key piece of new evidence is uncovered using methods that weren't available 7 years earlier.
The issue with this case has always been that law enforcement couldn't or didn't establish a timeline for the poisoning. Well, we finally got one, and that's all they need to nail that guy.
Have a seat.
Thanks. Thanks for seeing me again.
No problem.
I'm here because we got the toxicology report back on your wife's death, and I have a couple questions based on the results.
Toxicology report.
Clay still claims that he and Joan spent the evening together, then went to bed. When Detective Weber asks whether anyone else came by the house that night, Clay confirms that there was more than a 6-hour period where the couple was alone before Joan died.
Bam! Clay may not know it, but he just gave himself up. You see, the nicotine expert gave a timeline. It says the poison was administered 30 minutes before Joan's death, and Clay's just said he was the only one with her at that time. See ya, Clay.
Clay's statement and the medical expert's timeline can only mean one thing. After Joan went to bed that fateful night, her husband stayed up and prepared a lethal concoction by meticulously emptying out an entire pack of cigarettes and emulsifying the dried tobacco into a liquid substance.
As for how he administered it, well, do you remember that unexplained mark behind Joan's ear? When Joan was at her most vulnerable, her supposed dream man gave her a deadly shot of nicotine and then climbed into bed and waited for her to die. That amount of nicotine doesn't sound like a lot, but for a non-smoker like Joan, 1 pack would do the trick.
To ensure his plan worked this time, Clay waited until Joan was too far gone to be saved before calling 911 and performing CPR.
He thought acting like the perfect husband would throw police off his trail, but we know that trick.
Send an ambulance right away.
Just because someone helps the victim doesn't mean we stop looking at them. I mean, if anything, we look harder since they all had the access needed to kill. Why do they keep thinking they're smarter than the police?
When investigators looked into Clay's past, they discovered he didn't just lie about murdering his wife, but about everything, including his degree in architecture.
Will you marry me?
Of course, yes.
The whole dream relationship had been fake too. Clay hadn't fallen for Joan, just her bank account. When her cash started to dry up, Clay took his plan to the next level.
As soon as Joan was worth more to Clay dead than alive, he rewrote her story, going from a sexy romance to a murder mystery.
After twice failing to kill Joan with lidocaine, Clay changed the drug of his choice to nicotine and discovered that when it came to killing Joan, 3rd time's the charm. Certain he got off scot-free, Clay cashed in Joan's life insurance, quit his job, and left town, rich and ready to start over. As for Lena, she was right about everything to do with Clay and had only been trying to save her friend from the clutches of a dangerous charlatan.
Here's a strange thing about human nature that you see specifically in this case. Despite continued overwhelming evidence that Clay was using and abusing her, Joan just couldn't or wouldn't see it. She wanted so badly to be a romance novel heroine that she bought into the wrong man. You know what he bought? He bought an insurance policy on her life.
On this episode of Bizarre Murders, the strange things that lurk in the hearts of men and in internet chat rooms. When fantasies jump off the keyboard and into reality, you might just end up with the bizarrest murder of them all.
Don't you look delicious?
Once upon a time, in a farmhouse set in a beautiful valley of rolling hills, there lived a seemingly normal salesman. 42-year-old Gunter is a bachelor who resides in his childhood home alone. And from not having a partner, something else is missing from his life, a void that needs to be filled.
You see, Gunter dreams of eating people. Actually ingesting them. This isn't a make-believe zombie fetish. He is an aspiring cannibal. It's a fantasy that began during his childhood.
I ask myself the same question, Gudrun, every day, and every day I come back to your home. I come back to you because of the boy, but that is not the boy I want.
Raised by a distant father and a verbally abusive mother, Gunter's household is chaotic to say the least. Nobody knows for sure what sets Gunter on the twisted path he takes from child to adulthood. Maybe it's his father walking out on him when he was only 5 years old.
Gunter grows up terrified of being abandoned. In his dreams, he has someone he loves and who loves him, a little brother, and they will never be apart. Because Gunter will eat him, ingest him. It's a sick take on togetherness, but Gunter takes it as kind of like snuggling. You want to snuggle with that guy?
Gunter doesn't get much affection at home. Bitter and angry, his mother treats her child as a servant and as an emotional punching bag.
The problem when somebody feels that they have no value is that they just can't go on living this way. A person needs dignity and self-respect.
As an adult, Gunter joins the army.
To the world, Gunter presents himself as friendly and charming while concealing a dark fantasy life. In the business, we call this a mask of sanity. For some people, acting normal is just that, an act. It's why people are so shocked when the quiet guy down the street who keeps to himself turns out to have a dozen skeletons in his closet. It's not an analogy, a dozen real skeletons.
Maybe it's the discipline of military life that keeps him on an even keel. Maybe being away from mom eases the pressure. Or maybe it's losing himself in drink. For that whole time, his fantasies continue, but he doesn't act on them. But it's harder to keep being a drunk under your hat. A couple of DUI car wrecks cost Gunter his military career and sends him crawling back to, you guessed it, Mommy's house.
Willkommen, Liebling.
It seems that this is a turning point for our boy Gunter. Up until now, he's been just a geeky loner weirdo. Every town's got a few of them. But he found a place for himself in the army. Getting booted, though, and ending up back at home where he started seemed to twist something deep inside of him.
Home, single, trapped with his abusive mother in an old house in a tiny village. His military career a failure, Gunter reinvents himself as a salesman. By day, selling surgical tools. By night, trolling the internet. And then, one fine day, Gunter gets a bit of luck.
This is the second turning point. With mom out of the picture, Gunter is alone in a big house in a tiny village. He makes his mom's room into a shrine, like you do, and spends his empty nights searching chat rooms for people whose fantasies match his own. Now, with no one looking over his shoulder, there's nothing stopping him from making those weird fantasies come true.
In the darkest corners of the internet, Gunter finds what he's been looking for: hook up and cook up. A chat room in which people share their fantasies of eating human flesh or being consumed by a ravenous stranger. Gunter's dreams come true when someone calling himself Morsel replies that he's been looking for someone who wants to eat him up.
They don't just share fantasies, they talk like they're the real deal. They said things like, "I dreamed that someone will eat me up," or "Come to my house and I'll do it." Charming, huh?
In the Cannibal chat room world, Gunter becomes a star. His fantasies are compelling, and the murderous tableau he creates are tantalizingly real.
When you start lifting rocks on the internet, what crawls out can take your breath away, sometimes literally. There are boatloads of would-be cannibals out there and whole rafts of sick people who say they'd love to be eaten.
But not everything you order online is actually the merchandise you would hope for.
Luckily for the posers and role players Gunter lures into his home.
No.
He's no Hannibal Lecter. He only wants to dine on someone who's into it too and wants to be eaten.
It takes a while to winnow through the wannabes before Gunter finds the possible meal he's been looking for. If you're imagining a person with dark, hidden desires, Dieter might be the very last person you'd suspect. He's got a great job as a forensic accountant. He's in what looks like a happy, committed relationship.
I'll join you soon. I have to finish some work.
But behind those dreamy blue eyes, Dieter yearns for something. He yearns to be overpowered, absorbed, erased. He goes to the same chat rooms Gunter haunts, but his goal is not to be a cannibal. Dieter believes that his one purpose in life is to be treated like a beast, slaughtered, and eaten for his meat. I'm not making this up.
I want you to admire your dinner.
A romantic candlelight dinner is even more special when the person you are toasting is also the main course.
Are we going to dinner, or are you my dinner?
I have a plate all ready for you.
It used to be only the shadow who knew what evil lurked in the hearts of men. These days, it's anybody with a Wi-Fi connection, but crawling into those holes can be very disturbing. So be careful where you go and what you look for.
Have you slaughtered a man before?
No, only in my dreams.
Weird behaviors are frequently just normal ones taken to a bizarre extreme. Dieter wants to bring pleasure and to be close to someone. That's normal. He thinks the way to do that is to offer himself up as a meal. That's as far from normal as you can get.
Gunter and Dieter make a plan to turn their fantasy into a reality. Gunter has no clue how to go about slaughtering a human being, but he sets out to create the scenario he's got in his head, starting with a place to deal with Dieter's body.
Gunter. Well, hello. Don't you look delicious?
My. Yeah, Gunter. What impressive teeth you have.
So now we're getting to the point where people usually say, hey, let's talk about our fantasies, fool around, and then watch a movie. If your partner is too enthusiastic, you say your safe word and bail out. At least that's what I've heard. But Dieter makes things very clear.
Dieter, I wanted you to admire your dinner.
He wants to be eaten, and it's dinner time now.
I just don't think this is working. I didn't want to be awake for this part.
I don't want to get too personal here, but some people can be very particular about their fantasies. Dieter had envisioned things going a little differently. For one thing, he'd figured on better anesthetic than cheap scissorp and schnapps. Life's full of disappointments.
Drink some more.
Painkillers or no, Dieter is determined, and the disappointment of returning home uneaten is more than he can bear.
All right. You ready? I'm ready.
Dieter's biggest fantasy is that his cannibal lover will start by sinking his teeth into his private parts.
Oh my God.
Well, this is something you shouldn't try at home, or anywhere else for that matter. It's tough, apparently, and very, very sensitive.
Ah! Oh my God!
I'm sorry, Dieter. It's tougher than I thought.
I don't care how much schnapps or magic nighty-nighty cold gloop you've got in your system. The pain must be unimaginable. But obsessions have their own power, and Dieter is desperate to be consumed, to be erased.
Even though Dieter is becoming faint from all the bleeding,
Taste yourself.
Gunter doesn't want their dream date to end so soon. He's eager to please his dinner companion.
Maybe we need to cook just a little butter, some garlic.
Even now, even mutilated, Dieter could have survived. But he makes Gunter promise not to call an ambulance. That, my friends, is commitment.
What's wrong?
You're not much of a cook.
Gunter and Dieter's cannibal picnic has surprisingly turned into a painful bloodbath. But both of them are determined to make their fantasies come true.
Though despite being determined, both are amateurs.
It turns out that being emasculated by a clueless cannibal wannabe is not a ticket to a painless death nor a quick death. Who knew? Morning finds Dieter still alive, but he's too weak to participate anymore in his self-slaughter. He makes Gunter promise not to wimp out and call an ambulance.
Gunter.
I don't think it will be long now. Thank you.
Good night, dear teacher.
Bon appetit.
His fantasy now satisfied, Gunter savors every moment of the experience of taking Dieter apart, wrapping up the meat, and stowing him in the freezer. It's a telltale sign of serial killers that their murders become a kind of ceremony or a ritual.
Out of respect for Dieter, he lays out his best china and opens his finest Brunello.
Prost, dear Dieter. You are as delicious as you were handsome.
It's not that no one was looking for Dieter or that they didn't care. His partner missed him terribly and called in the police when he didn't return from the conference he was supposedly attending.
Dieter did a good job of covering his tracks. He's wiped his hard drive. He paid cash for his train ticket. It was his heart's desire to just vanish, and that's what he's done. As for Gunter, no one suspects him of anything. Dieter was a stranger. If Gunter keeps his head low, nothing's gonna stop him from killing again.
While Dieter's lover searches in vain, Gunter slowly works his way through his freezer load of Dieter steaks and schnitzels. He gets through about a pound a week. It's only a few months before Gunter starts feeling the need for some variety in his diet. He tells his hookup and cook-up chat room pals that now he's a real cannibal. He uses the details of what he did to Dieter to impress prospective entrees.
Now, Gunter has made what polite people like you and me call bad choices. Going online, talking about eating people, not the best choice. Actually eating somebody, very bad choice. Bragging online about eating people, that's how you attract attention for sure. Maybe more attention than you want.
In the chat rooms he haunts, Gunter meets a lot of thrill-seeking posers who type a good game, but they ghost him when he offers the chance to actually be turned into a blue plate special.
Sadly for Gunter, his search is looking fruitless until he gets a bite that seems too good to be true.
Felix is a 25-year-old law student living in Austria. After some chatting, Felix seems to be exactly what Gunter's been looking for. He's young, he's slender and fit. Gunter is drooling with desire.
Hello, Felix. I would love to make a tasty meal of your delicious flesh. I can prove it to you.
Gunter sends details to prove that he's ready to take Felix from farm to table, in comfort and style.
Gunter's dreams have focused on tender young things. Could his second conquest be even more exciting than the first?
Gunter's hot on the trail of a 25-year-old Austrian law student whom he thinks will be more tender than the tough meat he got from Dieter.
There's only one problem. Felix is not interested in actually being made into bratwurst. He's just playing a weird game. And once he coaxes enough out of Gunter to convince himself he's really chatting with a killer cannibal, he calls the cops. Gunter's given enough away in his chats for the police to figure out who he is.
The investigators can't tell for sure if the graphic images Gunter's posted online are real or just skillful amateur horror filmmaking.
Come in.
As for Gunter, he's confident he's done nothing wrong.
Please, have a seat.
What is this?
Wild pig. A little gamey, but sehr good. Have some.
The detective takes the frozen remains and has them tested in a lab. But most incriminating is the 6 hours of gruesome video documenting the bloody dinner party that Gunter and Dieter had the night the butchery began. The meat is human. Dieter is identified. The secret world of cannibals who find their prey online is both shocking and horrifying to the public.
Gunter is found guilty of murder and is currently serving a life sentence without possibility of parole. He says there's lots of would-be cannibals in the world, and he advises them to find a better hobby: coaching soccer, building model boats, train spotting. Oh, and one more thing. Gunter's a vegetarian now. He never eats anything that can talk back. I'm just glad I wasn't the detective who had to investigate this.